So I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to be able to address everyone and share my views on unity. As Joy had already started by defining what unity is, no, with respect to our definition within Joy Nostalgia. Let me also capture what is unity as described in a dictionary. No? So unity is being together or at one with someone or something. No? This is a word for togetherness or oneness. So it's either you're joined with someone, okay, or you're united with something, some element, some form. And sa Tagalog, ito'y pagkakaisa, pagkakatugma, or kaisahan. Okay? So when you see, so this is also capturing again the meaning of unity in our just Joy Nostalgia definition. Unity is our choice to be ubiquitously one in soul, mind, and body. So that's that oneness, no? And together as family, so togetherness. And to others, we are viewed as a community where we are aligned, in terms of our differences. And this is a universal, within the organization. Okay. So why is unity important? So I think the obvious answer when I was reflecting on this is really to achieve peace, right? To achieve harmony, to achieve one voice and one direction. But when I was reflecting, therefore, on getting to peace, no, I realized there's much more to unity than to simply link it to what we would usually term as teamwork, collaboration, being together in a group. And so I offer a personal perspective where we can define unity in three aspects. The first one would be unity with self. Okay, and I'll talk about that more in a little while. And then what we know commonly is unity with others. And last but not the least is unity with God. All right. So let's look at each one. So for unity with self, to me, I define this as finding inner peace. And so there's nothing new in what I'm going to share, but something that will emphasize what we already know and to reflect on it. So the very first thing about finding inner peace is really staying positive. So life is really not a bed of roses. Things get hard, okay? And being in the pandemic right now, it's really no joke. But to stay positive does not imply that you take things lightly or you take things for granted. It simply means also that one believes in hope that things will be better, that it will work out. So, di ba, sabi natin, let's keep our fingers crossed so that the good will always come out. Now, it may be a cliche, but it's really difficult to accomplish anything if at the start pa lang, sinabi na ng utak mo na hindi mo kaya or hindi mo magagawa. So part of staying positive is really being also able to learn to let go. Okay? So there are times when you may have given your all and still nothing comes out of it. Diba? But just let go. Don't beat yourself to death in terms of retrospection. Sana ganito, sana ganyan. Okay? Be at peace with yourself that you gave it your best and you learn from it instead. So be ready na lang to face the next challenge and stay positive as you do it. Okay. An example to this would be, in spite of some of the projects that we faced where there is best planning done, projects may still fail, di ba? There's what we call Murphy's Law. Pero hindi to katapusan ng mundo, as they say. So pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and then start all over again, as the song goes. And in fact, if you'll notice, the Pinoys, di ba, have this innate ability of being resilient, sabi nila. And that's why you know that when typhoon season comes, and there are photos or images of people caught in the typhoon, some even on top of the rooftops, no? Kasi nasubmerge na yung buong bahay nila. Pero pag kukunan sila ng picture, nakangiti. Di ba? And I think that's one thing, one trait of Filipinos that really keeps us going. Okay, it's the fact that okay, in spite of all the hardships that's happening, we continue to stay positive. The next one is being true to yourself. So, magpakatotoo ka. Okay? No pretensions. It's really hard that it or stressful, I guess, is if you're pretending to be something that you're not, or you continue to do something that you are not happy with or find no fulfillment in. And this is actually what prods people to find their aspiration or to reach their aspiration, because they want to get to something that makes meaning to them. Okay. Now leverage on your values and beliefs as your anchor, because you have to make your own decisions about what's important to you. It's so easy to follow others, what others dictate and what is acceptable. But in following that, in doing that, then you have to live with that decision. In my personal life, actually, I was born to a clan of accountants, and that being the case, I had to follow my father's wishes to also take up accounting when I was in college, which I did. I dutifully did, and in fact, I had spent about 9 years doing finance work. But at some point in time, I wasn't too happy anymore with what I was doing, which is the reason why I made a career shift to go into human resources, because I found that um, I was really much happier, being able to engage people, to talk to them. In fact, even with when I was with finance, I would notice that people would come to me for counsel, for guidance, for just ideas. And that's when I discovered, okay, then maybe it's really engaging with people where I should be. And therefore, I moved into HR. And I've never regretted it since. Okay. So yon, be true to yourself. And then the third item here is live with your conscience. So your conscience is your guide. Okay. It is your compass to doing right or doing wrong. But when you're in doubt, listen to it, because some of us would have experienced that if you do something that's incongruent to your values or to what your conscience says, then you become bothered. Hindi ka mapakali, hindi ka makatulog, di ba? You're definitely not at peace, and there's always this nagging feeling that you can't shake off. Kaya it's really hard also to make sinungaling, di ba? To tell a lie. Because if the lie is something that's totally disconnected with what your conscience tells you, it's a burden to carry, okay? And it adds stress to your life. The fourth item is really feeding yourself with acts of kindness, diba? To find that inner peace, then you also have to feel good, all right? Even the smallest acts of kindness will bring light into a world that needs as much of it as possible. It reinforces kasi the good in a person. I sometimes have imagined barriers actually when I become conscious of what people may say or think. Maarte or pamartir, if I try to help someone or be able to do something good, but I try to just brush it aside, because this is also a great way of being able to take the focus of yourself and being focused on others instead. And when you do good deeds, you actually become more aware of how others are struggling. And so all the more that you want to help them. And when you are kind, they said nga, yung kindness na yan, babalik at babalik sa'yo. And you really have a sense of fulfillment whenever you're able to help others. So those random acts of kindness actually fill your soul. Okay, it gratifies you. And sabi nga nila, the golden rule is do unto others as you would have others do unto you. So if you're kind with others, then that kindness obviously comes back. And then at the end of it, always be grateful. Okay. The best ever way to overcome the stresses in life or the upsets in life is really becoming grateful. You always have to see the good in everything. There's always something to be grateful for, even just to wake up every day that you're still alive, diba? So for me, I will always be grateful for the gift of family, the gift of friends, health, safety, for waking up to a new day nga, for having work, especially at this time of the pandemic and many others. So don't forget to be grateful. Okay. So with these few five things, you find inner peace. You're able to unite your body, mind, and soul. You're content, and you're able to reconcile yourself, no, before you can actually unite with others, which is now the next part. Okay. So in terms of unity with others, it's about building harmony naman. Okay. So this is where the teamwork, the collaboration comes in. And the very first, I would say, rule to be able to build that harmony is listen and seek to understand. Oftentimes we speak first, and we push others to be able to listen to us and to understand us. But turn the tables around. Instead, you do the listening and you do the understanding. Better yet, practice also active listening by actually asking questions, confirming with the other, engaging with your conversation in a positive way. And that's what we encourage our new hires, right? When they come into the organization, one of the things that they should do is really listen to what's being taught to them, what are our values, our mission, etc., because then they will understand better how to operate within our organization. But be active, no, in that listening by also asking questions. If they don't understand something, then they have to raise it so that they learn. The second one is to love, to learn that love is to forgive. So, admit it, no? It's difficult to work with others when masama ang loob mo or meron kang hinanakit, you have a grudge, no? But the question to you would be, bakit ka may sama ng loob? Or bakit ka may pinanghahakit, no? Is that something unforgivable? And what would our Lord have done? When Jesus said to love your neighbor, it would also mean forgiving them, so that there is no impediment to loving, and then life may go on. So, as Paul's letter to the Corinthians had said, love does not brood over injury. That's why there is always forgiveness. Okay, and that's the one of the key things to be able to build that harmony with others. The third one is changing how you react to situations and others. Di ba sabi nila, you may not be able to control a particular situation, but you can control how you react to it. And this has happened to me quite a few times. No, my husband would be actually my coach, and he would always tell me if something happens, no, what is done is done. There's really no point in worrying over what has happened, nor something that you were unable to anticipate. It just creates anxiety, which you don't need. Okay, so there are things that happen beyond our control. It immediately impacts our mood and distracts our ability to deliver and put stress in our lives. Therefore, we really have to recognize which things are within your control. Do not seek to change others, which is very difficult, no? But manage your reaction to the situation and your attitude to others. Focus on solutions rather than replaying what has happened in your mind. Don't cry over spilt milk, ika nga. And the next one is, of course, engaging with empathy. To empathize means being able to sense another person's emotions. And it's coupled with the ability to imagine what that person might be thinking or feeling. It's important because it helps us understand how we can respond to them appropriately, depending on the situation. No? It helps build the relationships. In Tagalog, ito yung pakikiramay. Nakikiramay ka dun sa loobin ng ibang tao. Okay? And this is something that we really have to adopt, especially when we know of people who are faced with problems, difficulties, no? You have to, sometimes, yun nga, again, we say that minsan, OA, maarte, ganyan, but you don't really know what they're going through. And therefore, you really have to put yourself in their shoes and think what they might be feeling, for you to really appreciate the hardships, no, that they are going through. And last but not the least is about celebration. Now we celebrate successes and we learn from failures together. So what truly strengthens teamwork is the sense of celebrating the success, no? And then we learn also from the failures by being inclusive, and we recognize everyone as part of the big team, okay? Whether they had given direct or indirect contribution to what has happened, okay? There are always lessons to be learned, especially in all the situations you find yourself in. No? You may not see what others see, and therefore it's good to learn from them. So you have to share your experiences with others for you to be able to gain more perspective on what has happened. For instance, the achievement of targets in an organization is actually the achievement of all, because whether there is direct or indirect contribution, it had helped to make things happen, right? Now, taking that context, no, within JNG, so there are elements that should be able to unite us together. So what unites us here specifically in JNG? Of course, we have our vision, our mission, our goals. This gives us direction in what we do at work. Okay. We have our culture and our values, and that's why we have Culture Day. Reinforcing these values provides us with that moral compass on how we will behave at work. Now, if everyone carries personal responsibility, we're therefore able to encourage each other to be responsible for our own actions and choices, and to perform those responsibilities diligently without being told or without being supervised, right? And we are also united in terms of leadership, because with our leaders, they are able to give us the direction, they're able to provide us the environment as well as the guidance, you know, to be able to act as responsible stewards within the organization. And last but not the least, an element that unites us is, of course, our prayer and our beliefs. Like what has mentioned by Father Manny earlier, no, it's good nga that we have um, uh, events or occasions where we actually come together in prayer, because it's also nurturing the spiritual connection with the Lord. And as God's family, no, we come together to be able to pray to Him. Now, there is a compelling need for us to unite, and this is true for all organizations. First of all is to recognize that there's really strength in unity. I don't know if you're familiar with one of the moral stories where, you know, you have a piece of stick and that breaks easily, whereas you have a bundle of sticks and that doesn't break at all, or it's difficult to break, because there's in reality there's really strength in unity. Therefore, we have to break down the silos between units, between departments, and we have to be able to operate as one. The other advantage is really to leverage, to be able to leverage on the cumulative capability of the organization, because there are skills um, amongst each of us. No man is an island, ika nga, and the solution really can be achieved by everybody coming together to solve. This is not just about executing tasks, but about learning new skills and enhancing existing talent, because we learn from each other, or we are mentored. No? We mentor each other. Okay. Now, in a team, of course, we are not perfect. And as I've mentioned, we learn from each other and we build on each other's experience. Now, oftentimes, no, we might actually, whenever, especially when there are failures, no, we tend to blame each other. But this is not a blame game. Actually, we should devote our time doing a why game. And how do we learn from it? No, why did it happen? Find the root cause and analyze that. So even leaders, no, we learn. So our leadership team is a mix of new and more experienced leaders. There are leaders also who are homegrown, as well as leaders coming from outside. So the learning is really a two-way street, and we should draw the best from the different groups of leaders to be able to have a strong brand of leadership that will be beneficial to JNG. The other compelling reason to unite is really to be able to develop an empowered and innovative team. We want to encourage people to be proactive, to be able to think of new ways and smart ways to work. But to be able to do that, we have to do the following. We have to encourage them to bring up their ideas and allow them to be tested in a safe space. No? Now, of course, whenever because these are new ideas, there will always be a chance of failure. But we have to encourage them to be able to do so and to act and test those ideas without fear of retribution. Okay? Because what we learn from those mistakes is how we will improve for the future. Okay? So we have to learn really from those mistakes as well as failures. And at the end of the day, being united also means that we will be able to rise against unforeseen circumstances and events like this pandemic. No, the pandemic is such a situation where anybody can get affected, and when somebody gets affected, then it affects operations, it affects uh, people around you, and the end result now has to be tulong-tulong na para matulungan yung ma-continue yung operations, matulungan yung tao. We really have to be able to help each other in times of crisis, and we can't do that if we're not united. Now, there are, of course, some challenges with respect to unity. And what are they? First of all is really pride and self-interest. According to Saint Augustine, it was pride that changed angels into devils. So pride is really the excessive belief in one's own abilities. And this is the deadliest sin of all, because a proud person has belief only in himself and may lose his belief in God. Okay? They will never succumb to being wrong. Hindi nila amitin, of course, kung mali sila. Because they always think they will be right. But it's good to admit mistakes or imperfection, because then that will open up oneself to be able to again learn from each other, okay, rather than it become a barrier for teamwork or collaboration. There's always also a common misconception that we talk to you about unity, you're also trying to impose uniformity, which is not the case. Okay, because uniformity means it's a standard across all, whereas we actually want to invite diversity. So there should be respect for diversity of ideas, perspective, beliefs. And what unity does need is actually consensus. Okay? It means that in spite of the differences, a group will come together to an agreement, no? Or a conclusion or a decision. So, in fact, this is something that should be done, okay, whenever we do performance calibrations. And when managers have to deliberate on the performance rating of an individual, there will be obviously difference of opinions with respect to an individual. But at the end of the day, the management team has to come to an agreement, to a conclusion. And whether or not a manager may agree with that decision, as part of the management team, there has to be just one voice, saying and supporting that particular decision. The lack of trust and communication, I think, is something that is obvious. Okay, it's self-evident. If people don't talk to each other or listen to each other, then there will be no meeting of the minds. How can you be united talaga, no? If you're not talking to each other. And in an empowered organization, trust is key because people can openly share and speak and work together with the reassurance that if there are problems, then they will get surfaced and it will be discussed openly because it's a safe environment. There is transparency. There is no need to watch your back or be protective about what you share or what you say. The other challenge would really be an unwillingness to compromise. No, when you try to negotiate on certain situations, the idea is really to be able to come to an agreement where you are both parties are comfortable, but with differing views. Coming to a compromise is really the way to be able to achieve a conclusion. So if there is no willingness, then both parties become stuck. They're unable to move forward, and it just simply widens the gap between them. And the fifth challenge to unity would be, I would say, incongruent values and hidden agendas. So again, if there are views which don't take into consideration, you don't consider other perspectives, or if there are motives, no, and not really at wanting to achieve the overall goal, and there are hidden motives or hidden agendas, then that undermines the ability to be able to be united, because there are constituents, I would say, that are not really um, are not really consistent or aligned with what the group wants to do, and that at some point in time will only hamper the way to unity. Now, I just want to share for those of us who were there during the 1986 EDSA revolution. I feel that some of you may have been really very young at that age, but for those of you who can relate, no, yung 1986 EDSA revolution was known as the People Power Revolution. Okay, this happened sometime in February 22 to 25. There was a series of popular demonstrations in the Philippines because it was a campaign of civil resistance against the regime that was at that time, and of course, electoral fraud. Okay, this non-violent revolution led to the departure of then President Ferdinand Marcos, which ended his 20-year dictatorship in the Philippines. So I just wanted to share a couple of pictures and of that time. No, so this was when on February 7, the snap elections was declared, and this was announced by President Marcos in November of the prior year, in response to a challenge, no, of wanting to understand whether he still had the mandate of the people, and so he called for the snap elections, and that was held in February 7. But during the elections, what happened was that uh, there was massive fraud. Okay. And one of the key events that happened at that time was there was a walkout of the COMELEC programmers because they could not bear the manipulation of the votes at that time. And so this was a picture of them leaving the COMELEC center. And so at the end of the vote, no, of the elections, so the official announcement came that it was President Marcos at that time, no, won over then President Cory Aquino by at least 1.5 million votes. Okay, so this was the official announcement. But when it came to the NAMFREL, And this was a picture of the tally board that was in Lasal Green Hills. I don't know if it's still around then, which at that time was showing that Corazon Aquino had won, or at least was leading by at least more than 700,000 votes. And so because of that, no, because of the sense of um, fraud that was happening at that time. So this was the Time magazine that was showing what was at stake with the Philippines. So what really triggered people power at that time was when Vice Chief of Staff Fidel Ramos and Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile had announced their withdrawal from the Marcos government. Okay. And so people had rallied behind this too. These were very close and loyal subjects, I would say, to President Marcos at that time. But they had, in a way, defected, from that particular, from that president. And that triggered now people to rise up in response, to be able to support these two leaders in what they were sharing against President Marcos at that time. And so what had happened was that people took to the streets. And I was also there at the time where you can see this is still EDSA. For those of you who were not born or were very young at the time, this is EDSA. This is POEA. And you'll see there were no bridges yet. No, wala pa yung overpass and all. And so there were tanks at that time, and they were headed towards Camp Crame, I believe. And there were civilians who had stopped them along the road. This was also mass action that had happened along Panay Avenue in Quezon City because there was a takeover of the government TV stations at that time. So you can see the number of people coming together. And this is a famous picture. I think this was shared in Time magazine as well, where this is along EDSA, facing northbound towards Boni Serrano, where people really took to the streets, and just being together. So the sense of unity was there when people really felt very deeply in their hearts, about time that there was change, where there was civilian movement and local opposition to really oppose or overcome the military and political forces at that time. And so it was known as a peaceful revolution because it was a civilian action. And we were able to overcome, and eventually President Marcos was removed from office, and that had ended the Marcos regime. So this is an example of, I would say, a very historic time within the Philippines where unity was really strongly felt. And with that burning feeling inside was the one that drove people to just really join hands with each other. Hindi sila magkakakilala, and yet, pag nagkikita sila sa kalye at that time, they would greet each other, they would bond together, yung nagkakapit bisig sila, they pray together and all that. So it was one big sense of a unified country at that time. And so it was very celebrated in the Time magazines. So we were celebrated across the globe of having successfully uh, established a peaceful revolution. And then it was commemorated some 30 years after, 20 years after, when we made again the Time cover magazine in 2006. All right. So this is being united with others. Okay. And in the words of Pope Francis, I just want to read this through. To understand one another and to grow in charity and truth, we need to pause, to accept and listen to one another, In this way, we already begin to experience unity. Unity grows along the way. It never stands still. Unity happens when we walk together. Okay? So last but not the least, unity with God. All right? Now, I felt that I was looking at the Holy Trinity, and it's really a perfect example of unity, right? God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit is one God. So the Holy Trinity is really a central mystery in our Christian faith, and no one can really fully understand the meaning of the three divine personas coming together as one God. But the way I relate to it is seeing the mind, the body, and the spirit being united. And therefore, we want to define our own Trinity within ourselves, right? And in reaching out with God. So, from a mind perspective, we want to understand the Word of God and the power of prayer. Although it's impossible for us to know God fully, that doesn't mean that we should not ever stop trying. Okay? Or sorry, that we should stop trying. We have the gift of God's word in scripture to be able to discern his will. And for us, we have prayer to allow us to have conversation with him. So that's why, joining Bible studies, for instance, is very good because then you understand more of what has happened and have that personal relation with God. And, for me, I do have this personal relationship. I do talk to him. I'm also very much a Marian devotee, and I talk to Mama Mary as well because that helps me, in my day-to-day work to be able to go through the challenges in life. From a body perspective, no service is too small to be unimportant. Now, people often take the mindset that, you are just one among the millions. So what can I do to make a difference? But there is, because this kind of mindset becomes a barrier if you think that way, if you think that you're too small to be able to do anything. Because each action actually contributes to a bigger cause and sometimes creates a domino or rippling effect where people can just simply emulate what you have done. What's important is that it gets initiated, right? And then last but not the least is spirit, no? Finding God in others. So whatever you do to the least of my brothers, diba, you do unto me. Remember what it says in the Gospel of Matthew. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. So in other words, anything that we do to our fellow man is something that we're doing to the Lord. So let us strive to be guided by this and bear this in mind whenever we interact with others. So I was thinking of who might be a role model for demonstrating this unity with God. And the person that we're all familiar with is Mother Teresa. So during her lifetime, Mother Teresa became famous as the Catholic nun who had dedicated her life to caring for the destitute and the dying in the slums of Calcutta. Now, she joined actually the Sisters of Loreto. In Mother Teresa's story, she says that it is a calling within a calling because in spite of the fact that she's already with the convent, there was a second calling where she needed to help the poorest of the poor, which is the reason why she had to establish the missionaries of charity. And this started off by looking after abandoned babies, no, and then expanded, you know, to be able to grow across the various countries. It was said actually that when she started the missionaries of charity, she herself had to beg on the streets to be able to get funds for this organization. So in 1979, she received the Nobel Peace Prize. and after her death was canonized as Saint Teresa by Pope Francis in 2016. Now, there were several quotes that were attributed to Mother Teresa, and they were really powerful quotes to be able to change your whole life, no, with that one sentence. These are a couple. So not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. We ourselves feel that what we are doing is just a drop in the ocean, but the ocean would be less because of that missing drop. If you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. So what struck me about these few quotes is the emphasis that any good that we do in the name of the Lord, small as it may seem, matters in a big way. But it has to start from somewhere and from someone. So Saint Teresa encourages us to do it because it gives us purpose and may start the ripple of goodness similar to what the Lord had done. So it is doing a small thing out of love. In fact, there's one more, which is God doesn't require us to succeed. He only requires that you try. Okay? In the words of a writer who was inspired by Saint Teresa's life, she wrote that when you realize how important you are in God's eyes, not society's, the stresses of modern life seem much easier to handle. And therefore, life in general becomes more enjoyable and you can live happier lives. So what's the call to action? So I have one more quote here. So seek the mind and will of God in all things, and your whole being will be drawn into greater unity with Him. So I'd like to end this with a call to action, where we are all actually responsible for being able to create as well as nurture the spirit of unity and building deeper relationships. And it doesn't have to start very far. Start with family. Start with the people you work with and all others who are around you. Recognize the barriers. So we talked about a few barriers earlier on. What are the challenges? No, but try to break them down. Because when the need arises, for instance, don't be confined to what your roles are. I've often seen some people saying, ito lang kang dapat kong gawin eh, hindi ko pwedeng gawin yan. But if you can help, why not do so? And last but not the least, set the example. If you are but the only one, but with that one action, right, you will be able to create the ripple effect across many others. So with that, I'd like to thank you for listening to this sharing on unity. I hope you gained something from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miss Jocelyn, for that insightful talk about unity. Kasi pag sinabi nga naman nating unity, usually it's with others, pero meron din pa ng self and meron din kay God. So thank you very much, Miss Jocel. So that was truly a beautiful message to inspire the whole JNG community. And now, to facilitate our next segment, may I invite our Organization Development Officer, Mr. Jello Pohol. Hi, Jello. Welcome back.
Hi, Mr. Doris. Thank you. And also, thank you, Ms. Joselle, for your very meaningful talk. I think it's very timely, given the current context we have right now. It seems that, distancing, separation, being remote is the norm, diba? So, but we cannot let that stop us from coming together within ourselves, coming together with those around us, and of course, with our God. So thank you very much, Ms. Giselle, for those wonderful insights. And so, ma'am, for this afternoon, we have with us three panelists who would like to join us in our discussion to deepen our discourse on unity. And the first panelist we have is the Collection Management Unit Head from the PDU, Ms. Mary Ann Ongtauco. Hi, Ms. Dan. Good afternoon po.
Hello, Jello. Good afternoon. This is Dan Ongtauco from RDG PDU, and I'm here in Binyan office, in our sales office here.
Okay.
Uh, Actually, what you have shared kanina is very inspiring and timely for all of us. Especially, we are, of course, not prepared for being uh, part away from each other while we do all our work. So, with this, yung katulad nga nasabi ni Jello, remotely, we are working, the others are working, work from home, yung iba nasa site, and then from the other offices. Uh, I have two questions here. The first one is, how are we going to maintain the sense of unity while the other teams or the other employees are working remotely? And then, any suggestion on how we can have a team building that we can maintain and promote the unity despite that we are apart from one another?
Okay, thanks for that question, Dan. I think this nga calls for creativity. And that's a challenge that many organizations are raising now. Kasi yun na nga, especially for Filipinos, di ba? We're very physical eh. Kumbaga, di ba? Pag beso-beso, hug, ganyan-ganyan. We're very highly social beings and physical in that nature. So medyo nakakaiba talaga na ang sitwasyon natin ngayon. So I think it really calls for a little bit of creativity to be able to bond the same way as we did. Obviously, doing it virtually, like what we're doing now, no, we come together, helps in a way. In fact, maybe that's the only one of the few recourses that we have is to continue to have that engagement kahit virtual. Uh, it may seem awkward also for some, no, but I think we have to try. I think we really have to try, and it really depends on the person to be able to open up para maging engaged pa rin siya with the others, even if it's just virtual. Okay? And with respect to team building, there are many, I think they're promoting a lot of online activities now, games, ganyan, para kahit papaano nagkakaroon ng konting fun, 'di ba, in terms of the activities that you do. So, but yeah, it really requires a little bit of creativity and personal engagement of the people to continue to be able to you know feel united or still feel bonded with each other. Konting tiyaga lang on that recourse. There are a lot of ways, no, yung mga games that are coming out right now in terms of the mga team. My daughters do this eh. Meron silang mga games na they play, and it's participated by different players pero they're in their respective homes, but they play together, yung mga ganyan. So if we have that kind of activities, I think that will bond people.
Thank you, Miss Giselle.
Thank you so much, Miss Dan, and thank you, Miss Joselle. But you know what, Miss Dan, just to add, no, the mere fact that we are, trying to get through all of this, being separated, although it's not ideal, it's uncomfortable, that's unity, diba? We're trying to keep each other safe. So one day, we could soon come together again and be physically united. So thank you, Miss Dan, and thank you, Miss Joselle. And so we have
Thank you,
another
Dan.
analyst. She is the project engineer from the PDU. She is Miss Joni Panganiban. Hi, Joni. Welcome and good afternoon.
Hello po, sir. Good afternoon po. Thank you po for this opportunity na mapili po ako bilang isang panelist from Team Binyan. Based on my understanding, unity is a strength. Like parang when we are together, we become stronger. It is being in harmony, in one purpose, being in uniformity, which is very important, and kagaya nga po ng sabi nyo, very timely, especially in this time of pandemic, which brings almost all businesses in their downfall. But despite of those recession, our company still managed to perform our main purpose, which is to serve more affordable housing units to our fellow men, particularly po dun sa mga low income earners. I have prepared one question po. As a part of Construction Management Division under PDU Group here in Jubilation Enclave, despite of challenges and failures we have encountered here, as what you have discussed, ma'am, that no team is perfect, and we can learn from each other and build on each other's experience because, as you have said, that uh, leader is still learning as well as we their subordinates is learning, and this is not a blame game. How can we still encourage firm and solid unity here in our team so we can work together toward a common vision and create a future of hope for many Filipinos to contribute to our company's mission and success? Thank you po.
Thanks, Joni. I think my simple answer there would really be to get everyone involved, no? Because I think maybe we are maybe used to having direction, for instance, coming from above, diba? Mga instructions or guidance. But what will really matter, and in fact, that's what I mentioned in my talk, no, is to propose now empowerment and innovation. And that will get people involved because then they'll come up with different ideas that we can test. And for all you know, those ideas will even further our ability to operate well in this during this pandemic. So I think the involvement of others now is what we should uh, parang espouse because then yung inclusion, having that diversity of idea, diversity of perspective, even the solutions, we may have not uncovered, all the best solutions yet, and baka lumabas pa yan because we're now asking or seeking everybody's involvement in that particular in a particular situation. So, I mean, that's the way I would respond to that, Joni, because I think our formula today works. But now the question is, what will make it better? And maybe there are ideas out there that we have not yet considered, and that might further our operations even more.
Thank you so much, Joni and Miss Giselle. And our third and final panelist is the Product Development Assistant from the LIU, Mr. Jomari Pelaggio. Hi, Jomari. Good afternoon and welcome.
Hello, good afternoon, ma'am. Hi, Ma'am Giselle. Good afternoon po.
Good
Again, this is
afternoon.
John Hello, ma'am. Again po, this is John po from Business Development Unit. Nakinig ako mabuti, ma'am, dito sa about Unity. So, this time, ma'am, during pandemic kasi is magkakahiwalay po tayo ng workstation. May nasa bahay, may nasa office, meron din po nasa site. My question is, ma'am, what are the tips that you should consider for keeping organizational unity up, even if that everyone is in the office?
Okay. I think that's my whole presentation. No. But anyway, just to let you know, yun nga yung earlier yung discussion natin, no. We really have to be communicating with each other often. Because nga we are separated in terms of being working from home, as well as working at the office. One of the key things talaga is communication. Kasi unless we speak to each other, then we wouldn't know, what's running through people's minds. We can't operate the business, etc. But I mentioned earlier that part of communication is really listening. Kasi it can't be a one-way street eh. So people who are receiving this also will have to listen well and ask questions. They have to be, again, as I mentioned earlier, involved, no? You listen actively by asking questions, clarifying, confirming, no? That's very key. The other one is to have some kind of engagement nga, where it's not just about work. I think we have to really find time for teams to come together and do something fun. So yung earlier question where they asked about team building, that's really important nowadays. Kasi nga we don't have the opportunity now to be physically together, and therefore some form of team building game, whether it's online or by phone or whatever, where we can be creative in doing so, has to be there. And then I think maybe the other point that I would add is this is also a good time to know more about each other. Kasi pag nandito sa trabaho, 'di ba, panay, it's just really purely work. Now that you have time to actually engage virtually, I wouldn't be surprised if, you don't know too much about a person, like ano yung hobbies niya, ano yung what's his family, I mean composition ng family niya, what they're interested in, what they watch, mga ganyan. This is a good time to catch up on those things. Get to know your neighbor better. Even if they're not physically there, but they're just, one Zoom link away or Google Meet away, di ba? Do a purposeful kind of sharing of yourselves para you get to know each other again. That's something that I would, because that breaks the ice, feeling ko. So I hope that answers you, Jo Marie.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jo Marie, and thank you, Miss Joselle. No? So also a part of unity is, of course, knowing your neighbor. We're not just colleagues, we're not just office mates. We are a family here in Joy Nostalgia. No? So thank you, Miss Joselle, for those beautiful reminders, those very timely insights. No? And so that brings an end to our mind session. So, but before we end, Miss Joselle, we'd like to show you our electronic certificate of appreciation. And so, let's show it on screen. So, the certificate of appreciation is hereby awarded to Miss Jocelyn B. Labrador as our joyful tribute and appreciation for sharing your presence and expertise with us and for sparking light, hope, and love in our Joy Nostalgia Culture Day Mind session. May you always continue to be the light that sparkles and shines ever so bright, creating moments of happiness and memories of hope for others. Spark Joy Moreover, awarded this 3rd day of September in the year of our Lord 2021. Signed,
Okay. Thank you, Jello. And thank
Hello,
you to Dan, Joni, and Jo Marie.
Hello, Joselle. Thank you very much, Joselle.
Hi, thank you, sir.
Your presentation was really excellent, and it was like it's like as if it was a book that was summarized in a presentation. No? I think you could have written a great book based on what you have said. Thank you very much. I hope you can share your slides to
Yes, sir.
everyone, because it's a very well thought out talk that you have. So thank you very much. Personally, I have learned much and and feel much inspired. So thank you. As a matter of fact, I would like to ask you if you could have some sort of a I don't know how you can do this in like a workshop seminar that can be repeated from time to time, because it is central. Unity is obviously is very central to our organization, and that is something that we should have. Otherwise, then there is no organization. There is no Joy Nostalgia.
Yes.
So I hope we can find a way that we can perpetuate a great deal of what you have discussed and shared to everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Joselle.
We'll find a way, sir.
glad about it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right, so once again, thank you, Ms. Joselle.